It's time now for the Gem Young Wealthcast. Brought to you by Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, a family-owned independent insurance and financial planning agency since 1947. Now, from their studio on Star Center Drive in Canfield, Ohio, here's the host of your program, Leo Daprile.
Welcome to the Gem Young Wealthcast. This is Leo Daprile. Well, this June, for the whole month of June, we're going to have conversations about aging in place, assisted living, or ultimately a long-term care stay, and what that impact is to you both financially, emotionally. So we're going to have attorneys in here, but I'm starting today, we're going to start with money. I'm going to start with Stephen Daprile. Hello, Stephen.
Hey, Dad. Thanks for having me here.
You got it, buddy. So a lot of our conversations with our clients lately are, it's not lately, but it's pretty much an ongoing conversation, is the fear of going into a nursing home, what that's going to do to them financially. Can the surviving spouse, are they able to maintain their standard of living in the house if one of them ends up into a nursing home? So it also leads to other conversations like aging in place. People want to stay in their homes as long as possible. We all get that. We all do, right?
Yeah.
But we're going to find, too, that sometimes that's an impediment, and they have to start going down the road of that. So as financial planners, we try to get our arms around that, right?
Of course we do. Yeah, it's something we have to be cognizant of because of the lifespan of the average individual increasing, and usually coupled with that is a stay or a stop in a long-term care facility, which we know is very expensive. So it's certainly something we're talking about with all our clients. It's certainly something that our clients are thinking about or experiencing with a parent or grandparent. So it's a prudent discussion to have. I'm glad we're doing this segment, and I appreciate you having me on for it.
Yeah, because, aging in place has its costs. And I think, for instance, when you stay in your own home, it costs you a lot of money to stay in your own home, but you're used to it. Mm-hmm. Your budget's built around it, so you don't think of it, right? You don't think about your property taxes. You don't think about yard maintenance. You don't necessarily think of, okay, what is this really going to cost me? Because people just get scared with that, oh my gosh, if I go into a nursing home, I'm going to have this crushing bill. And when the reality is that might be where you really need to be, or assisted living. You might really need to be there for lots of reasons.
Of course.
It could be around the socialization, because one of the challenges we see with our clients is, as people live longer, a lot of them see their friends pass away. So their social circle shrinks.
Yeah.
Sometimes they've buried their children. So people that they may have relied on for their support system may not be there. So there's a lot of emotional elements of the aging process. And sometimes, let's be honest, sometimes the aging process just isn't pretty.
Yeah, of course. And I think a lot of people really feel a lot of anxiety surrounding what a stop in a situation like that would look like, right? Or how they want to have control over it. One of the last things people tend to have control over and that they hold on tightly is money. So it's certainly something that people, the aging population really experiences anxiety about. And I think it's important that people, anybody really considers that and thinks about it and makes a plan for it, particularly people who are close to being retirees, because you're kind of at a point where, hey, this is what we've accumulated. It is what it is, for better or worse. What does a stay look like, right? How can we fund it? How can we protect our estate for our heirs, or do we need to, right? Those are questions that we have to be asking, because at the end of the day, the emotional aspect, again, part of the emotional aspect, and I understand that's just a portion of it, but certainly you got the financial planner on, so I'm going to talk about the money aspect. Is do I run out of money? Do I not leave enough for my heirs like I wanted to? So making a plan, right, and stress testing your plan, adding the risks in is important for your own peace of mind, not just for your own finances.
It's important to note on that, too, with our financial planning software that we use. We can simulate a nursing home stay and its impact to the financial plan for a client.
And we do that with pretty much every case.
Right.
We do that with almost every case that we work on, because we think it's super important to talk about, and it can really derail your end of life or legacy plans, right? And if you haven't factored that in, I think you could be doing a disservice to your heirs and what you're trying to achieve.
One of the things, Stephen, and I'll talk about this more with next week. I'll have Joe Johnson on the show, and we're going to talk about the legal aspect of it. But one of the things that we see is, the longevity, like you brought up earlier. In our plans, we've talked about before on the show that we plan for men to live to 92 and women to live to 94. If you're just getting that disengagement phase of 65 or 67, there's a couple of decades ahead of you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that can happen and go on in your life during that period of time, right? And how these risks play out and when they play out, I think is key to putting them in a plan. Because like we talk about on the show all the time, it's about managing risk, mitigating risk, transferring risk, or accepting risk.
Right.
So, and many times the fear of a nursing home is great.
Yeah.
But the practicality of how long they'll be there and what it'll really cost might be not as horrible as they think. Because, one of the things we've done research on is the prior generation, they were the pension generation, right? So they had pensions and Social Security. And a lot of people that were working and knowing they were having a pension weren't necessarily great savers because they're like, well, I got a pension. I'll have Social Security. I'll be fine. Well, those are the people when they went into a nursing home didn't have a lot of assets.
Yeah.
So, and that's where kids saw the parents go in there. Next thing you know, they were on Medicaid and saw all their savings go. Yeah. And were angry that Medicare took their savings when in reality, Medicare paid for them to be there.
Right.
Medicaid.
And I just think a general comment on the situation that retirees are facing and many people are experiencing with relatives is it's priced, cost of long-term care facilities or advanced age care is priced as a luxury, right? It's priced for people. It's priced to only service a small portion of the population. But the reality of it is it's almost become something of a basic human need, a basic end-of-life care that people require. And there's a rational fear that, a stay like that could be out of your control and a cost that a quote-unquote luxury cost that you have to spend maybe being somewhat of a blue-collar worker, somebody who has a pension and a stable income and doesn't have a lot of assets to depose, right? That's, I think, again, speaking more exclusively on the financial aspect of it, that gap between the luxury and how it's really more of a human need it's causing anxiety about people's financial situation, rationally so.
Yeah, especially if you look at Medicare laws, where essentially, if you go into a medical rehabilitation, it's only covered for 20 days. And then they will subsidize up to 100 days of rehabilitation, but your cost sharing goes up proportionately after so many days and then significantly then to no coverage.
Yeah.
And that's just rehabilitation. So I think part of the reason that this is such a fear for people is because there is no government subsidy for it, and I don't think there ever will be. But I think the bigger issue here with people is how do we get their arms around what it's going to do to them. It's like, it's just like any other fear. If you talk through the fear and try to get your arms around the fear, now you can manage it better.
Right.
And manage it appropriately. Let me use that word instead of better. Manage it appropriately. Okay. Because when we can sit there and say all we want, here's the averages. You might be below the average, or you might be above the average, right?
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah, and certainly that's something we factor in, and it's all case to case, right? What do your resources look like, right? What are we anticipating, right? And what strategies do we subsequently deploy for that? It depends. It depends. It depends. It depends. I say that on this show all the time, and this long-term care planning is certainly a case of it depends, and I think each case needs to be evaluated individually so that the proper advice could be rendered on how you hedge that bet, for lack of a better term, should you have a long-term care stay and what that would look like to your overall plan.
That's why, Stephen, we don't give a broad recommendation, because the easy answer is everybody should just buy long-term care insurance.
Yeah, sure.
Right? But we find in a lot of cases, it's either they ask about it too late and it's too expensive for what you're going to get anymore, right? Or some people can self-insure. and some people just can't afford it.
Yeah.
So it's not a universal solution for everybody. And back to your point that it's a case by case decision. It truly is. So there's no broad mandates for that. So and the challenge is Medicare or Medicare supplement plans are getting more expensive. Long-term care insurance is getting more expensive because when people buy them, they keep them. I know that sounds like a stupid statement to make, but insurance costs are built upon so many people canceling policies over the years, and how many people will truly be around to use that product. Okay, it's called lapse pricing. I've talked about it on the show before, right? So many people are going to lapse their policies was their estimate. That's not true in the long-term care business. The people buy them, plan on keeping them. So we're finding the price points to be much more expensive, and they're products that if you own them for 20 years, in some cases, we're finding that, if you take the death benefit out of that equation, that over 20 years, what you could receive in a nursing home benefit isn't that far away from the premium that you paid.
Yeah, right.
Some people want, and some people don't care and want their estate preserved. But if they know that, and some people just say, well, if that's the case, then I'll just self-insure myself.
Yeah. And some people, whether your assets are high or low, I think it also depends, right? If you're single with no heirs, it might be pretty simple to say, I'm just going to self-insure. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with you. You could say, I don't really have money that I necessarily need to leave behind. I don't really want to. I'd rather as you like to say, the check to the undertaker bounce type of philosophy. And if that's the case, then, that has its own problems. It has its own unique situations that could occur, of course. And I'm sure you'd love to talk about those. But at the same time, at the end of the day, financially speaking, and that's the comment the point I would make, it could be different, right? So conversely, you have somebody who has 3 kids and they want to leave somewhat of a legacy behind, and they've saved a lot but not quite enough, right? That's where some of these unique solutions can come into play. And that's why it's not a blanket recommendation. I think there's been a push lately. I think there's some states, I think Washington State is one of them, maybe California is requiring a tax on like a wage-based tax if you don't have long-term care insurance. I don't know if those got pushed through fully, but I always thought that was an interesting philosophy, forcing people to buy insurance. There's a whole regulatory rabbit hole we could go down with that, and the whole political rabbit hole, but this is something worth mentioning,
Right.
Some governments perceive it as such a need that they're mandating it.
Wow. That's what happens when you have a system like this that's so wildly expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah. But again, I think that business is still, again, to your point, case by case basis. So I think what's prudent for our listeners to hear is, when you start this process, I think you need to start by saying, what's the fear really, or the human component of staying in your home, and having these discussions now with family by saying, okay, when's enough, right? When can you no longer? Because everybody, we see it. It's the world we live in. And like I said, I feel the same way. I want to stay where I can as long as I can, right? Before I go in it, because facilities scare people. And some of them that you go into, especially the older ones, aren't the prettiest places in the world. They look institutional.
Yeah.
And it almost looks punitive to be there, right?
Yeah.
A lot of them today are not that way. They've upgraded from that. And that's the actual nursing home part of it. But, there's the assisted living in between, where the reality is most people are going to go into assisted living when they have the choice. A lot of times when they go into a nursing home, it's something catastrophic happened, and they're either leaving the hospital within a day or two, so you have to make a decision on a rehabilitation place within a day or two, knowing that might turn into a stay into assisted living or nursing home after that. And people just don't think that through. A lot of people don't say, if I do, I want to go to X facility.
Yeah. That's the tricky part, is facing your own incapacitation at this point, right? and what that looks like and having a plan for it. It takes some foresight, right? Or it takes, somebody who you really trust to have your best interests at heart.
It's no different. It's no different than when I was more in the life insurance game. A lot of people just the whole conversation about your mortality just isn't fun.
No, not particularly.
Right. So it's easy to say, okay, I'll have my will and trust. Those are easier conversations to have, right? But life insurance conversations are always more difficult for people by saying, okay, if I die or when I die, not if you're going to.
Yep.
We all are. What's that look like? Same thing about end of life planning. That's something we should continue to do with our clients by saying you should be thinking more specifically of what kind of facility you want to go into. Maybe have some sort of, because here's the worst part from where we see, and everybody has the same stressor. Mom or dad can't take care of themselves anymore. And how many people listening feel this way that have been their caregiver and they can no longer do it, and everybody knows that person needs to go into a nursing home.
Yeah.
And the guilt that the caregivers feel from having to do it because they can no longer do it.
Right.
That's a really tough spot to be in.
Right. And I think and I guess just, again, you have me on, you're talking about my perspective and, things that I think that, people should be thinking of, people should be considering is they have a family member with this, or that they themselves are kind of staring down the barrel of it. It's important that I think, again, sue me for just kind of, again, this might be my own bias sitting here where I sit, but I think it's important that people are involved with their parents' estate, especially when probably before they think they should be. Because by the time you think you should be involved, you should have somebody involved with your estate, it's usually a little too late. And making sure that you've communicated what your expectations are with your whoever your power of attorney is, an executor and things like that, to make sure that you have your specifications specifically outlined, right? And it's especially for the people who are in a situation where it's like, hey, we've planned for a long-term care situation and it's not a big deal, right? Let's just say you have insurance or you have a specific investment portfolio tailored to it, right? It can cause unnecessary stress because the heirs could be like, I don't know if they can even afford this. I don't know what they have, right? It's important that those conversations are had before you think you need them, is right. And that's kind of maybe, again, I'm a financial planner. I'm also, raised by, insurance agents, third generation here. So I think it's a little bit of risk management. You want to get in front of things, right? So there's not moments of, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on? What do we do? Right. So there's a clear strategy or a form of comfort in executing whatever decision is most prudent for somebody who is staring down the barrel of assisted living or long-term care.
All right. So here's my challenge question to listeners, not you. How many of you, and like we've talked, because let me preface it with this. What we say to our clients is not only should you get your legal work done and have your estate plan in place, but you should have a detailed conversation with your kids about it. And in many cases, we facilitate them, or at least offer to facilitate them, right? But how many of you really have done that other than saying, by the way, my financial plan, I got my wills and trusts done or whatever, my powers of attorney, and you're my medical power of attorney if my spouse isn't here, and you're going to be the executor, and the conversation stops there. How many of you have done that? How many of you have taken the time to have that deep conversation? I bring it up, not that I want to call people out because they're bad. I bring it up because a lot of parents don't want to disclose everything.
Yeah. Or it's just uncomfortable too.
It is uncomfortable. Yeah. It is. Hey, when I die, here's how I want things to be.
Yeah.
God, that sounds like fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So that's I get the headwinds. I honest to God get the headwinds to it.
Yeah.
But I've said it before, and this is going to probably be my mantra for this month, is whether you plan or not, dominoes fall. And if you don't plan correctly, it doesn't stop the dominoes from falling. And if you didn't do it right, what damage are you doing to relationships, or what sort of cost to your estate did you does your estate now have to absorb because you didn't?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. exactly. I think that's a great challenge question. Can I just second that?
Yeah.
Just second that. I think it's important to consider that. Yeah, 100%.
And again, we see it with a lot of our clients, they're private. So let me make this muddier. Bring in today's modern world where there's so many blended families. What if one person brings most of the money to the table? But they're really close with all these the children from both blended families. That's a harder conversation to have.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course. That's a tough conversation to have, but does it need to happen, right? Is it important that everybody knows so when the dominoes do fall, there's no confusion, there's no resentment, the expectations are specifically outlined, and again, if you're looking for somebody to fall on the sword, you should be looking at your financial planner or estate planning attorney or somebody to facilitate and have those more honest conversations to facilitate the necessary details, really.
Yeah, they're not easy. I'm challenging people, but I'm also kind of acknowledging.
We've had those discussions too.
Kind of do it for a living, so I know the necessity to it.
We do practice what we preach a little bit. So
yeah. Well, if you know me personally, I'm one that's not afraid to get to the point.
Exactly. I've been accused of such too.
And so that's okay. And have all those hard conversations because they're easy. As hard as they are, and this is for listeners, as hard as they are to have now, they're way better than not having them at all because of the family damage you can do.
Yeah.
And I'm not just because, we'll talk about this too all week. Is everybody says they have good kids, and I believe that to be true. But, I'll say this all month too. Money changes everything. And you can't just look at your kids. There's your kids and their spouses. There's maybe in-laws. There's a lot of noise that can happen that clouds people that you would normally say, okay, they're going to be just fine. I like to say you just don't know that.
Yeah.
And you don't, we've seen it. We've seen the damaged relationships with beneficiaries because there's when they weren't talked about and everybody comes in and have their own expectations.
Yeah. Exactly. We've seen it. I'm sure we've seen it both personally and professionally. I'm sure Mr. and Mrs. Listener, you've seen it too.
Yeah.
You've probably been the receiving end or have seen something or heard about something. I think you probably, if you're hearing this, I hope you're thinking, they're right. I've seen Mr. and Mrs. Joe Schmo have a situation where, man, they passed away and the dominoes fell and it was really a bad situation for that family, right? Not that I'm hoping that you've seen that, but if you have, it's all the more reason to take this seriously and consider it.
And how many of you out there can say, I've seen families wrecked because of this and because somebody wanted X, somebody wanted Y? And you're asking the average person to interpret a legal document, assuming one was in place, right?
Yeah.
So that's a challenge. So I got a lot of questions for Joe for next week. So thanks for helping me line this up.
Yeah, you're welcome. He's great, by the way.
Yeah, he is. So I got to take a break. Believe it or not, we're out of time. All right. This is Leo Daprile. I'm here with Stephen, and we're talking about aging in place versus assisted living or nursing home. That's our theme this month for you, trying to give you a bunch of different perspectives. So I'll be back after this break.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we make planning for your future simple by offering both insurance and wealth management under one roof. Our team helps protect what matters most while guiding you toward your financial goals, whether it's safeguarding your home, health, business, or planning for a work-optional lifestyle. With everything in one place, you get seamless support, personalized strategies, and peace of mind. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-7941 today to schedule your fit meeting and experience all-in-one protection and planning.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we know insurance can feel complicated and overwhelming. That's why our team is here to listen, understand your unique situation, and provide solutions that work for you. From home and auto to life, plus a team dedicated just to commercial insurance, we help protect what matters most without the stress. Don't wait until an issue arises. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-7941 to schedule your fit meeting and get the protection you need today.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we believe your financial goals deserve more than just a plan. They deserve a team. From planning for a work-optional lifestyle to managing risk and supporting your everyday needs. Our financial planners, paraplanners, and service team work together to build a strategy that truly fits your life. Planning for the future will help you make that confident financial decisions and achieve lasting peace of mind. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors today, 330-533-6936, to schedule your fit meeting and start building your financial future.
Now, back to the Gem Young Wealthcast, brought to you by Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors. Once again, here's Leo Daprile.
Welcome back to the Gem Young Wealthcast. This is Leo Daprile. This shows our first this month where we're talking about aging in place versus assisted living and long-term care, because this is where we all end up at some point. All of our clients end up here. All of you end up in one of these three spots. So this is a very relevant discussion of where things go. So we're going to have a bunch of different folks in this month. So we're going to take this topic and take it on different angles. I think you'll find it all pretty interesting. But today we're talking about the money part. So I have with me today Stephen Daprile, and that's exactly what we're doing. Hello, Stephen.
Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we were talking a lot before the break of what people really don't do when it comes to money and the challenges of the conversations. Not necessarily that they don't plan, but where things are going to shake out are challenging. And again, I'll save more of that detail for when I have Joe in next week, Joe Johnson from Friedman and Rummel. That's the attorney segment to it. But let's talk about a word you always use on the show, and that's optimization.
Yeah.
You know, so this is where the financial planning is the art, not the science, because so many of these issues are very emotional, right? Like not talking to your kids about money is very emotional. Everybody logically knows you should, but for one reason or another, a lot of people don't want to do it. They don't think it's any of their kids' business. They don't want them to know how well or maybe not so well they're doing. So there's a lot of reasons. But again, like I say all the time, you know, the dominoes fall and they're going to fall whether you like it or not. It's just how much control you have over how they fall, right?
Yeah.
So that's where financial planning optimization comes into play here, right? So we talked about it a little bit. Go deep into on a financial plan how we get our arms around the risk of a potential long-term care stay.
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. It's not. I said I'm leading this off bad. Oh, it's really simple. No, so I think first and foremost, you look at exactly as the plan is without effectively planning for it, and you just stress test it against what would be pretty much the self-insure, right, option, or the really no plan at all option, right? What does it look like financially, assuming you just deduct it from your assets or your income and you pay for it? Right. What happens to your overall estate in that situation? What's your cash flow look like? Right. Are you able to leave anything behind? Are you able to even afford the stay for depending on how many years? Right. So we first kind of address that question. And if the answer is it barely affects anything, which is few and far in between, to be completely candid, but if those situations arise, we typically suggest, right, a more specific option depending on overall investment, risk tolerance. It'll be factored into the plan, but much more marginally than it would be otherwise if there is something more common than not where our plan starts to fail or money starts to run out and there's, you know, legacy issues at play with, or even affordability issues at play. Then you start looking at, okay, what are our options here? What's the risk tolerance, right? So we'll go down the avenues of, do we need to have an investment portfolio for this? Do we need to consider an insurance option? And there's many different ways to insure against long-term care. Long-term care insurance is one of them. Oftentimes people will consider things like, just to throw some stuff out there, a universal life policy with a long-term care rider. You know, between life insurance and long-term care, sometimes there's a hybrid there of a solution, and depending on each individual plan, will depend on what is ultimately recommended or the options necessary that are presented, right? Other things that factor in, right? The bulk of your assets traditional, right? Traditional 401ks, right? IRAs, or is the bulk of your income, right? Is the bulk of it pension? Is the bulk of it Social Security? Those affect the decision on what is the most optimal solution to hedge that risk, right? So if there is a situation, you are right hedging your concerns. And something we certainly talk about a lot with the insurance options is an inflation protection of some sort. We talk about it a lot because long-term care inflation is not, 2.25% what general inflation is. It's much higher. So it's important that we have done our due diligence to consider what it would cost when that situation would arise, but we've also accounted for the inflation aspect of it. So these are the things that we're doing behind the scenes to make sure that the plan that we have in place, or what we're suggesting, how we transfer that risk, is as optimal as it can be without, sacrificing what you want to do in the short run. So you can have those options, right? You can have an assisted living option. You can have a long-term care insurance option, or whatever the option may be, when that need arises, right? And it's communicated to the heirs. There's a whatever amount of money that can come in and supplement that, so it's not draining your estate in its entirety. So we try and get as deep as possible. We take it seriously. And again, we evaluate the stress test. We evaluate how it affects the overall plan. And then kind of the soft end of it is, what is the most optimal solution to provide to our clients?
We also take that from a perspective of, we tag income, to every person in a plan. Mm-hmm. And we plan for scenarios of expenses today, expenses with only one spouse. We factor in when different ones will pass and the loss of income and how that plays into the plan too.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. So that's why it's in the way we do this part of the plan is putting that whole cost of the nursing home in there to stress test that, knowing it's either going to come from investment earnings, investment principal, their Social Security check, and their pension check, mm-hmm. right?
Yeah.
To see because that's because if you get in that situation, that's exactly what it looks like. Mm-hmm. So that's where we try to optimize it to your real life on that, right?
Yeah.
And then to your point, that's where the solution becomes more clear, or the alternatives to how to solve the problem become more clear. Mm. But it's a situation where we really have to get that deep.
We do. And again, a lot of what I was saying is what we're doing behind the scenes. What we're ultimately trying to do by doing all that research is enable the client to make the most informed decision possible. So we'll lay out we might have a recommended, hey, we really think this is what you should do. This is definitely the most optimal solution. This really protects it or really helps you should this situation arise. But the idea is to give the client options. Here is your options. If there's a long-term care facility, here's boom, boom, boom. 1, 2, 3. Here's how things will likely play out based on what we're projecting. Which one do you want off the shelf? Which one is going to help you sleep at night? Which one is going to provide you with the comfort that you need, right? Because ultimately, we can't make that decision for you. We can tell you what we think is best, right? And we could say, this is the one that this option here at option X, we think is really your best option. But at the end of the day, you're the one who does have to live with it.
There's an old joke that says, be nice to your kids because they're the ones picking your nursing home.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Right? Yeah.
So I think that's, if we're going to be that precise, then I also think people should be talking about what nursing home they want to be in.
Seriously.
Yeah. I'm not kidding.
I seriously think so too.
And that should be documented somewhere that these are your preferences, because you never know, that there's based on your medical conditions could be limiting where you end up. Mm-hmm. We've seen situations where people were in facilities because that was the only facility that would take them, and nothing about that facility was ideal.
Yeah.
But that's kind of where. So again, more things to think about. And have you ever talked to your kids about saying, look, if I end up in a nursing home, here's my expectation, you know, especially if you're in your 60s. And by the way, let's talk about this for a minute, because this seems to be the cycle. If you're waiting till you're like 65 to 70 to have a conversation about, for instance, if long-term care insurance is one of the recommendations we would come up with, for instance, that's a really expensive age to buy it.
Yeah.
You know, if you're really serious about wanting to insure for a long-term care, the ideal age to buy that's at 55, and nobody does.
Yeah.
That's the problem. So if we can stress test a plan at 55, if that's of great concern to somebody, because we've had clients that have come to us in their late 60s and says, we've had this concern, and when we do the testing, we just say, yeah, you qualify for it, but it's going to cost a boatload of money. And we've seen situations where when people wanting to buy it in later years, if they owned it till when they probably were going to use it, they would have paid almost as much in premiums as they would have gotten benefits.
Yeah.
In some situations.
Yeah.
So that's not all. But so if you're a listener and this is a concern of yours, and if you're waiting till then to think, okay, now I should be thinking about what this decision looks like, that's the crazy expensive part. And here's why it gets expensive. The way insurance works, the life insurance business, the long-term care business, both work the same way. The more years they have to collect premiums, the lower it is.
Yeah.
Okay? So they all have their mortality tables that says if you're going to be in a nursing home and you're a male and we expect you to go in at X age and be there for X period of time. I'm oversimplifying it.
Right.
But that's the concept of how they price the product. So if you buy it at 55 versus 65, there's 10 more years where they can smooth out the payments for you. Because that's the challenge we have. When the conversation for some people is really rearing its ugly head, it's almost, in some cases, the insurance isn't a solution anymore. So now you have to optimize the investments. You have to modify how you look at things. You know, you have to take more of a, okay, you're going to probably be on your own on this one if it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of the law of large numbers, right? And the way that it factors into pricing. The statisticians are clapping right now. Yeah, they're very excited. But yeah, no, that's certainly a big portion of it. It's always one of those things where the best time to consider insurance, let me put it this way, I shouldn't talk about property and casualty. Best time to consider life insurance and long-term care insurance is sooner than later, and talking to a professional about it, because it's cheaper today than it is tomorrow. It's more expensive tomorrow than it is today.
For a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
Because everything goes up every year. So the double whammy, like on a long-term care insurance policy, is less years of collect premium plus the inflation factor of medical costs going up. So those products are changing prices regularly.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So that's also part of it. So we'll get into more of this with Joe next week, but having the proper estate planning documents is important, right?
Of course.
And we've gone to the point where we've actually gone to clients with their attorneys with them to explain what it is, because the whole thing for some people, and it can be overwhelming. You know, like I say all the time, with success comes complications, right?
Yeah.
So it's not as, you know, when people really start thinking through asset distribution or estate distribution, it gets a little more complicated than they thought.
Yeah, yeah. As soon as you sit down with your estate planning attorney, I think oftentimes you start to realize just how complicated what you have really is, right?
Right.
So yeah, and we always try and coach our clients up on staying on top of that, renewing that, reviewing that, and it's certainly important for people, especially if there's been, sorry to get technical about it, but if there's been like a material change in your family situation, right? These are conversations that you need to be having, right? When there is that material change, and sometimes even when there's not, because the soft stuff, right? Your preferences have changed. What you want might have changed, or it might not be communicated exactly the way that you wanted it a decade ago, 15 years ago. So those are certainly things that we're always trying to stay on top of our clients about, and and as you alluded to, also having a hand in when necessary, and oftentimes it is.
I've only had one client in all my years of doing this. He was an awesome guy. Marty was his first name. That's where I'll stop. And Marty was diagnosed with, let me make sure, glioblastoma, which was an aggressive form of brain cancer. And Marty came in my office and said, I got this cancer, and it's going to kill me, Leo. And I probably got a year before I start babbling. He was that kind of guy, very practical. He sold his property because he didn't want his wife to take care of anything. Mm-hmm. So he knew it was coming. So he sold his property, bought her a condo, fixed up the condo, made it accessible for him for when he knew he was going to become debilitated, transferred all the assets that he could into her name before he passed, pre-planned his funeral so that she didn't have to. I mean, did everything.
That's amazing.
And spent months doing all this stuff. But in 40 years of doing this, I've only had one person do that.
Yeah.
I think that's why this is such a conversation I want to have with people because, it's another old cliche. Everybody wants to go to heaven, but nobody wants to die to get there.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
So even when we know we have a terminal disease, it's not something a lot of people just face and say, okay, let's start getting it all taken care of now.
Yeah, because there's more important stuff for the person who's going, right? When you're terminally ill, then finances really seem to take the back burner. While you're reasonably healthy and of sound mind is the best time to do it. So when you are going, you don't have to be scrambling to do all of this extra stuff and have the enormous amount of stress. That's the kind of the emotional aspect of this too that is certainly worth considering. And I kind of think that's a beautiful story, Sumi. I think that's really sweet that man
very admirable. But that's who he was.
Yeah.
He said he goes, hopefully she's got enough grief that I'm not here, but I don't want to have to deal with all this other stuff.
Yeah.
And he did it all, literally did it all.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'll say this frequently on the show. I did all my work, as you know. I had my wills, my trust, medical power of attorneys, living wills, had it all done. And this is why you don't want to wait till somebody gets sick, because this is the human condition. I'm going to use myself as an example of the human condition. I knew there were some things that needed changed on your mom's trust.
Mm-hmm.
But after she was diagnosed with cancer, I never had the heart to say I need to modify legal documents.
Yeah.
I knew I needed to. I emotionally couldn't get it there because I felt that I was putting money over her.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I'd have to live with the way that one domino fell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course.
So I'm saying that because I want listeners to hear that this is when everybody's healthy and reasonable.
Yeah.
When you really don't feel like doing all this and really don't feel like having these conversations, it's now when you have to have those conversations.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. You're a good, unfortunately, you're a great case study and why it's important to be on top of this and why it's important to consider that.
I think I could be a case study for a lot of things.
That's a fair point. I think I'm probably in the same boat with that one.
Right. So again, everybody, what I want listeners to hear too is we all romanticizing our staying in place. We all have the fear of the nursing home stay. Mm-hmm. So those things are kind of polar opposites, right? So we tend to think of things that bring us comfort, like, okay, I can gracefully age in place and have the money to do it. But, there becomes a point when you physically can't. Mm-hmm. And that's why you want to have that other plan by saying to, if it's more than likely your kids, of when it's time to put me into, if I get to the point, if I'm in that situation where I need to go into a nursing home, do it. Mm-hmm. Don't feel guilty about it. And here's what I want.
Yeah. Empower yourself to be able to financially make that decision. Right.
And take the grief and guilt off your kids.
Yeah.
So that so they don't have to sit there and go, we've heard it 1,000 times. I felt terrible, but I had to put mom or dad in a nursing home. Mm-hmm. In many cases, they thrive.
Yeah.
Because by the time they get there, they've lost their social interactions because of their declining health. So they become very isolated in a dangerous situation. So everybody knows logically it's the right thing to do, but emotionally very difficult.
Yeah.
So it's a lot on you to make sure that the way things transition is as reasonable and as comfortable and as heartfelt as it can be.
Right. Yeah. And we already have a client who is recently put their mother into a nursing home, and she's just thriving. She's thriving, right? And it's just kind of she felt empowered to do so, right? And it's a good case study of why it's important to have those open discussions and why you want to be able to pull the trigger when it's medically or emotionally necessary for that person.
Yeah, because we all get there one way or another.
Yep.
You know, everybody says, when it's my time, just give me a heart attack and take me. But those are the shock passings. That's not how most people pass. So again, that's the other reason of wanting to have this conversation is we see so much of this. And we see so many things that, you know, just from a human point of view, not a financial point of view, that people can do to just make things easier for everybody, including themselves. Yeah. You know, like you said, we've seen people go into nursing homes and thrive. You know, those that were declining rapidly, going to a nursing home didn't expedite that process, if you will. It's just that's where they were. And probably because of the rate of the decline and the amount of hands. Because you hear, you know, if somebody's coming over a couple of times a day versus somebody that's there and a team is there around the clock for you, that's a much different scenario. So,
yeah, it really is, and it could really provide that person what they need.
Yeah. All right. Well, good to talk to you today, Stevie. That was a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. So again, I have Stephen Daprile with me. He's my CFP, and we're talking today about aging in place versus long-term care insurance and how that affects you. And that's going to be our series for the month. So I'll have a wrap up when we come back. But this is Leo Daprile. This is the Gem Young Wealthcast. I'll be back after this break.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we know every financial journey is unique. That's why our team of financial planners, paraplanners, and service professionals work together to provide personalized strategies for a work-optional lifestyle, investments, and risk management. We're here to help you plan for today, protect tomorrow, and enjoy the life you've worked so hard for. Take the first step toward financial confidence. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-6936 to schedule your fit meeting today.
Hey, it's Medicare Jer here from Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors. Medicare can feel confusing, but I'm here to make it simple. With the right Medicare Advantage or supplement plan, you can worry less about unexpected healthcare costs and focus more on enjoying life. Let's make sure you've got the coverage that fits your needs and gives you peace of mind. Call me, Medicare Jer, at Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors today at 330-533-7941 to schedule your appointment, and let's get your plan in place.
By calling this number, you will be speaking to a licensed insurance agent to answer your questions or provide additional information about Medicare Advantage plans, prescription drug plans, or Medicare supplement insurance plans. This is an advertisement for insurance.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we make planning for your future simple by offering both insurance and wealth management under one roof. Our team helps protect what matters most while guiding you toward your financial goals, whether it's safeguarding your home, health, business, or planning for a work-optional lifestyle. With everything in one place, you get seamless support, personalized strategies, and peace of mind. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-7941 today to schedule your fit meeting and experience all-in-one protection and planning.
Now, back to the Gem Young Wealthcast, brought to you by Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors. Once again, here's Leo Daprile.
Welcome to the Gem Young Wealthcast. This is Leo Daprile. So here we are. This is where we are in life. We all end up dying someday, but the process of how we get there, be it dying in our home, assisted living, or long-term care. You know, I know it sounds kind of a grim thing to be talking about, but we all do it. We all have to go down this. So what's the best way for you to do it? There's a lot of dynamics that go into play with that, and that's what we wanted to talk about today. So we started with your money today and optimizing what your fears are and figuring out how to get our arms around those the best way that we can, and then give you alternatives to how your life plays out. Because again, somebody's got to be making these decisions, and do you want to be in a position to be making the decisions or other people for you? At some point, someone's going to have to do it. So we wanted to give you that way of thinking that if you want to age in place or if you can't and you end up into a nursing home, how to really stress test your financial plan to make sure that it's something that's feasible for you to do, to know what it is. We'll get into next week when we talk to Joe Johnson. We'll get into a little bit more of the Medicaid fears. I didn't want to really get into those today because I wanted to save that for the next episode. But there's a lot of content that we'll go over with that next week with more of the document and the emotional impacts of it. And that's going to be the theme for this month, is going to be the emotional implications of what your decisions are, and not just the math. We've done enough shows on math and wills and trusts. That's what these shows aren't going to be about. It's going to be more about the human condition and how you approach these decisions, excuse me, whether you make them or not, and maybe why you don't. Because this all plays out, and the world keeps moving every day, whether we like it or not. It just keeps on moving. So how do you put yourself in a position that when you get to these years in your life, they're the best that they can be for you at that time, right? It's not, like I said, ideal, but all these situations happen. That's why what we can do from a financial point of view and a financial planning point of view is help make you comfortable that if these different scenarios play out in your life, that we've put you in a position to, number one, and most importantly, understand what your alternatives are. Understand if they happen, how you're going to react to them, how your family's going to react to them, because those are the key parts of it. And then the money part. Then how do we solve the problem? But having these difficult conversations now is important. I'll say that. That's going to be my theme that you're going to hear all month is having difficult conversations about these things. And a lot of people talk about it, and we're going to talk about why they don't too, and understanding that. So if you're in that situation, I'm challenging you to have these conversations, either with your financial advisor, your financial planner, then with your children, your estate planning attorney, because the more you talk about these things, and the logic says the better off we are, but there's lots of reasons we don't. And I'm not diminishing any of them for why you don't do them, but at least know them and have some sort of conversation somewhere in between what you really expect things to be. And I get it. It's not a fun conversation, but it is the life in the world we live in. So right after the show, the podcast will be available. If you missed any part of it, check it out, or check out our YouTube channel for the Gem Young Wealthcast to see the video portion of it. This is Leo Daprile. This is the Gem Young Wealthcast. Until next time.
And Wealth Advisors, we make planning for your future simple by offering both insurance and wealth management under one roof. Our team helps protect what matters most while guiding you toward your financial goals, whether it's safeguarding your home, health, business, or planning for a work-optional lifestyle. With everything in one place, you get seamless support, personalized strategies, and peace of mind. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-7941 today to schedule your fit meeting and experience all-in-one protection and planning.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we know insurance can feel complicated and overwhelming. That's why our team is here to listen, understand your unique situation, and provide solutions that work for you. From home and auto to life, plus a team dedicated just to commercial insurance, we help protect what matters most without the stress. Don't wait until an issue arises. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors at 330-533-7941 to schedule your fit meeting and get the protection you need today.
At Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors, we believe your financial goals deserve more than just a plan. They deserve a team. From planning for a work-optional lifestyle to managing risk and supporting your everyday needs. Our financial planners, paraplanners, and service team work together to build a strategy that truly fits your life. Planning for the future? We'll help you make that confident financial decisions and achieve lasting peace of mind. Call Gem Young Insurance and Wealth Advisors today, 330-533-6936, to schedule your fit meeting and start building your financial future.
Join me every week where we talk anything and everything about your money. Have a topic you want to hear more about? Email Katie, that's Kayti, at gemyoung.com. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, and the iHeartRadio apps. Until next time, this is Leo Daprile.